Hello, good afternoon. It's BBC Radio Solent at 10 minutes past 12. Lyme disease on the programme now. Yes, it's something that when you look it up on the NHS website, you find out it's a bacterial infection spread to humans by infected ticks. Why are we talking about it? Well, cases have been reported throughout the UK, but areas known to have a particularly high population of the ticks include New Forest and other rural areas of Hampshire. Now, joining me in the studio this afternoon is Sarah from Lyme Disease UK. Thank you very much for coming in. Patient support group.
Yes, thank you for having us here. It's so important to raise awareness. There's just not enough known about Lyme disease in the UK and the prevalence.
Well, and then sitting either side of you, Elliot and Moira, thank you both very much, because both of you have got personal experience of this.
That's right.
Indeed.
Who would like to tell their story first? You're looking at each other to say, right, OK. Go on, Elliot.
Right, I'm ex-Navy. And in 1993, I went to do an exchange job in the States. And somebody omitted to tell us that we were moving into a Lyme disease endemic area. So I was out on the ride-on tractor, mowing the lawn, chasing the deer out of the garden. About 18 months later, when somebody from the embassy turned up to have a chat, looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm mowing the lawn." And he said, "Well, you should have, didn't they tell you about Lyme disease?" "No." And he checked, and for certain I had not been told about it when we'd arrived. But I'd obviously got bitten by a tick at that point, and I went from being fit, healthy military type who could do 40 minutes on the cross trainer, 40 minutes on the exercise bike and then go for a run, to getting on the exercise bike, doing 10 minutes, having my heart rate hit 206, and just getting off and walking away from it, and it was downhill all the way from there. It was something. It's a really debilitating disease, and I've been through a whole raft of symptoms. I could probably take the whole hour up in this segment just talking about the technical stuff, because I've got now to running one of the local meeting area groups here in Winchester. To give people support and to try and explain to them how to work their way through this minefield that we're living in.
Do you assume you were bitten then by an infection?
Undoubtedly. I and my then 18-month-old daughter both have Lyme disease, and we were both bitten. We both know we were bitten by ticks, because I can remember pulling these things off me and not immediately knowing what they were, and then having been told about the Lyme disease and checked up on it, and those are the things that are, I'm every time.
So more than once then,
yeah.
To say the least. And how is your daughter?
Sorry?
How is your daughter?
She has taken 3 years to do her A-levels. She's had about 3 years off as she is doing her first year of university, and it's been a real uphill struggle to get her to that point. So
when she was growing up, you say she was bitten when she was 18 months.
She eventually got to the symptoms kicked in as she hit womanhood.
Right.
And once she had gone through puberty, then that was when she started having the fatigue symptoms, the clinical depression stuff, and it then took about 18 months from that. First of all, realising that what she was going through was very similar to what I had gone through in the early stages. And then actually getting a positive blood test, which we had to get done privately from a lab in the States, because at that point UK testing was absolutely abysmal, and getting positive blood tests for it, and then starting to do some sort of treatment.
And Sarah, is that one of the problems, that symptoms can be so delayed that actually then it's quite difficult to work back and sort of realise what it was?
Absolutely. It's a really common story that we hear time and time again. In the first case, people might not even notice the bite, so it's really important to understand that ticks can be very, very small. They can be as small as a poppy seed, and they like to hide. So they will crawl up legs or arms until they find somewhere they feel safe before they feed. So around waistbands is important to check, in between fingers, in children along their hairline is a very key area, because they're a lot lower to the ground and maybe roll around on the grass and so on. But if you do know you've been bitten, it's really important to look for symptoms for days, weeks and even months afterwards.
Or years, as what Elliot is suggesting.
Or potentially even years, because sometimes those symptoms, it's a systemic disease. It impacts various parts of the body, and you wouldn't necessarily tie them back to an insect bite. And myself, I was bitten in the New Forest when I was 12, and I did have a summer flu, which is a common symptom afterwards, but we didn't realise that it was related. My joint pain and knee pain started after that. Migraines started after that, and they were all just put down to hormonal changes and growing pains. And it was only when similar to Elliot's daughter, it was 2013. I'd had a period of high stress at work, picked up another infection, and it was that point my health fell off a cliff, and it took me 2 years beyond that to be diagnosed. So it's certainly not the case that nobody gets symptoms, but you sometimes just put them down to everyday health niggles.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important to be aware that if you are out and about, you might not even notice these bites. So if your children and your family are starting to have symptoms across particularly the spring, summer months, you can be bitten any time of year, but obviously we spend more time outdoors in the spring and summer, and there is more tick activity. But if you've been in an area where there is heathland, woodland, long grass, even urban parks and gardens can have ticks in them, and infected ticks. You really need to be looking out for these symptoms and taking it seriously. It's not something to mess around with.
Moira, what about you?
My experience was that I've lived in the New Forest now for 20 years. In 2010, I began to get a stiffness in my feet, and which was progressing up my legs very slowly. And in the summer that year, I was bitten by another tick. I believe I'd been bitten by ticks periodically, and mosquitoes, all sorts of things, during the previous 14 years. But on that occasion, I did get the rash, the bullseye rash that they say look out for. Some weeks after that, I had a test through the GP, which turned out to be negative for the Borrelia.
The Lyme's disease,
which is the common bacteria they're looking for with the Lyme. It came back negative. So I carried on getting worse and worse and worse. By the end of that year, I couldn't walk, and eventually went to a rheumatologist, and they said it was rheumatoid arthritis and wanted to give me methotrexate, which I wasn't too keen on taking because I really didn't feel I was strong enough. And so took myself off to a private clinic and had the immune system treated to try and get strong enough, and gradually have made a recovery since then. During that time, I was in California a couple of years later, did have a test, and they found bacterial activity enough to warrant a course of antibiotics. So I took these, and within 3 weeks, I felt fantastic. It was obviously a bacterial infection, and subsequent to that, various diagnoses have suggested I've got a co-infection of Lyme. So it's not Borrelia, but it is perhaps Bartonella, which is one of the at least 25 co-infections that we know about. And so I've been taking, really looking after my immune system, lifestyle, regulating what I eat and drink.
Because, am I right in thinking with all three of you, this is now ongoing? Because you all sit in front of me looking very healthy, I have to say, but this is now something that you have to be aware of for the rest of your lives now.
Yes. Absolutely, and I think it's easy to think, look at us now and we all look healthy, but it's taken, I don't know about, the others, but it's taken me a week of rest to be able to be here today, and it will probably take me somewhere between 2 and 7 days to recover just from this short outing. And that's the sort of disability you're talking about if this isn't caught up in the early days. So
to get here today, because there was travelling involved or mental stress of talking about it? What was it, Sarah?
It's the combination of the mental and the physical energy that it takes to take part in everyday life that makes it very difficult when you are affected by a disease such as this. And I think Maureen's point is key, that ticks don't only transmit Lyme disease, they transmit other co-infections, and perhaps that's why some people are affected more than other people. Some people seem to be infected perhaps get treatment very early and go on to recover, and it's not an issue whatsoever. But other people, perhaps they're not treated early or they're not treated sufficiently. Moira's case, she had the bullseye rash. That's clinically diagnostic in and of itself. Her GP should have known to give her a course of antibiotics at that point. And I find this very frustrating. Representing Lyme Disease UK, we get patients joining our group on a almost daily basis where GPs have failed to miss these signs. And there's a course that has been developed. Another Lyme disease charity, Lyme Disease Action, worked with the Royal College of General Physicians, and there's a very good course that all GPs, nurses, pharmacists and so on have access to. It's free, it's online, and it takes 30 minutes. Less than 3% of GPs in this country have done that course, and I find that absolutely disgusting. I don't see there's any excuse for for at least one GP in every surgery to have taken that course, and avoiding these terrible stories that we're hearing day in and day out. I was speaking to a mother a few days ago, and her 10-year-old is begging to die because he cannot bear the pain he is in and the fact that he is missing out on his life. And these are the sort of stories that we hear day in and day out. And I don't want to raise alarm. That isn't what this is about. It's about raising awareness to make sure that people don't end up like we are, because there are so many things that can be done if it's caught early. And prevention is key as well. People are going out, we're coming up to the school holidays, and if people aren't taking those key prevention measures, they're putting themselves and their families at risk.
Okay, well, next we're going to talk about what to look out for, the prevention measures, and actually what you should look out for. But we'd really like to hear your stories as well today. Have you been infected by Lyme? Have you gone through something similar to my three guests today? Or did you go to your GP and actually the GP was spot on and straight away it was like, right, let's treat you with antibiotics, let's sort that out. 0345 30 30 961. That's 0345 30 30 961. You can text me 81333. Start your text with the word Solent. That's 81333. Start your text with the word Solent. Lyme disease on our midday clinic today.
And over, waves of frightening feelings, floating weightless, unwilling, my will keeps bending and breaking. Honey, hold me, trust me, let me ride in your love all night, babe. Hold me, touch me, I wanna die in your love all night, babe. Lost in your life, baby. I wanna stay right here all night, baby.
Now everything's vivid, vivid. Torture, tempted with pleasure, reckless tangles suspended. You want it all, nothing's wasted. Woman, hold me, trust me. You know you can hide in my arms all night. Hold me, trust me. I'm gonna ride in your love all night. I'm lost in your life, baby. Alright, I wanna stay right here all night, baby. Alright, let's get lost in the night, baby. Alright, I wanna stay right here all night, baby. All night, alright.
Midnight, your eyes, bitter wine, conversations. You and me, so money, babe. I don't need a patient.
Need a patient.
One taste and I'm hooked on it. Don't lie, I know you want it. I'm addicted to your light. Lost in your light, baby. I wanna stay right here all night, baby.
All night, darling.
Let's get lost
BBC Radio Solent. Hello, good afternoon. We're talking about Lyme disease this afternoon. In the studio, I have Sarah from Lyme Disease UK. It's the patient support group. I also have Elliot and Moira, and the three of them have all been affected by Lyme disease, and really quite badly as well. Thank you very much for your texts, your phone calls, your messages. This is how to get in touch. 0345 30 30 961. 0345 30 30 961. If you don't like to slip your headphones on, I'm just going to bring in Angela, who's in Shelbourne. Hi, Angela. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Sasha.
Hi there. And I understand you went to the doctors to ask for a Lyme test.
I did. It was 20 years ago, but I don't think things have changed very much since then. I had the bullseye rash on my arm, so I went to my doctor and I said I'd like a Lyme test, and they said, you don't get it in this country, go home. Actually, I insisted, and I did actually get a positive NHS Lyme test. So I was given antibiotics for a short term. I asked for more. I still wasn't better. Over the years, I've had to have 2 new hips. I've had shingles frequently. I've had lots of chronic fatigue. And I had to give up my job. And so I then had another test. But once you've had antibiotics, your test will be negative. And so I got a negative test. So I sent my blood to Germany last year. That's 20 years later. And it came back active Lyme disease. So I just want to say that, as Sarah said, so few doctors have done this test and so few doctors seem to know about it. And I think that's what is the problem in this country.
Sarah's just been listening to your story and nodding along with it. And 20 years on, but have Angela's saying how much have things changed? Do you think not a lot, or...?
Don't get me wrong, there are some very good GPs. You know, some people will go to their GPs. They either will be educated on Lyme disease or will have taken and passed this course. But sadly, on an almost daily basis, we still hear these stories of people who are showing classic symptoms and aren't getting treatment. And 20 years on, sadly, it isn't much better. And even if the GP does run a test, sometimes they run them too early. It can take up to 6 weeks to produce antibodies. So if you are tested before that point and it comes back negative, you may still be infected. And then the other thing is as well, the 2-tier testing that we rely on in this country, the way it works is your GP will order an ELISA test, which is the first tier, and only if that's positive will it be sent to the UK reference laboratory for the second level of testing, the Western blot. And for it to be counted a positive test, both parts of that need to come back positive. Now, there's recent research to show that that's around about 53.7% accurate. So in my mind, that's just not good enough. If we were talking about any other condition, if it was missing almost half of cases, we just wouldn't... We wouldn't be using it. No.
Elliot?
In my particular case, I had a number of this initial C6 ELISA test done while I was still in the Navy, and that always came back negative. When I eventually got to see what we would term an LLMD, a Lyme literate medical doctor, who sent my blood sample off to the States to be tested, he said, I'm not going to bother with the ELISA test. We'll do a Western blot and we'll do a PCR. The Western blot is a chromatogram test, which is if you like, the Rolls-Royce test, where you can see all the different bands of the chemicals that are in your blood that the Lyme disease causes. That one came back very equivocal. It was borderline not infected. But there is another test that he ordered up for me, which is not a diagnostic test. It's a research test. And they don't like using it for diagnostics because it has a habit of throwing false negatives. It's called polymerase chain reaction, or DNA amplification. And surprise, surprise, I was absolutely up at the top end of the infected thing. The problem with this bacteria is that it's a stealth pathogen. It hides from the body's immune system, and what they're looking for in the testing is the body's immune response to the pathogen.
A lot of different tests. Angela, can I just ask, how are you now?
I'm fine because I've treated myself with herbs as recommended by German doctors. But what I would like to say that concerns me is blood donorship. I could go and give blood and I presume that I would be passing it on to somebody. You know, I think that's something that I would like to raise as a concern.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I've just caught Sarah's eye, and she's happy to talk about that in a moment. So let's talk about blood donors and whether or not it gets screened or not. We've also had a text in from Jenny who's in Hedge End saying in Sweden all children are vaccinated against that. So we can talk about possible vaccinations as well. Talking about Lyme disease this afternoon in our clinic. 0345 30 30 961 for your experiences.
BBC Radio Solent.
Travel.
And the latest with Oliver Head.
Thanks, Sasha. There's a collision on the M3 southbound between Junction 5 Hook and Junction 6 for Basingstoke. It's taking out lane 1 of 3 now and causing quite a queue in the area. The A34 southbound to the Winnell roundabout Winchester, that's also extremely slow going. There's a collision there. Not entirely sure if you can get through, but at least an extra 15 minutes onto journey times. Near to Litchett-Matravers on the A350 on Poole Road, busy at times with those temporary traffic lights. At the moment, traffic's getting through quite nicely. Newport's busy on Fairley Road and Medina Way coming in. And on the trains, there's a points failure. No service between Basingstoke and Reading. Update us if your hands free. There's more in half an hour.
Call the BBC Radio Solent travel hotline.
0345 30 40 961.
It's actually looking like a really nice day today. Dry and sunny throughout. 22 Celsius. We've hit the 70s, 72 Fahrenheit today. Cloudier this afternoon, but still feeling warm. Temperatures down to 10 Celsius tonight. Tuesday, dry, often sunny, variable amounts of cloud. Again, feeling warm. 20 Celsius, that's 68 Fahrenheit tomorrow. Staying dry with increasing amounts of sunshine every day as we go through the week. Temperatures rise as well, making it feel really quite warm or even hot by Friday. The current coastal waters forecast the winds southeast veering west or northwest later, 3 or 4, increasing 5 at times. Visibility is good, the weather is fair, and the sea state is mainly slight.
Breakfast with Julian Clegg.
Tomorrow after 9, I'm on the Isle of Wight for a special big conversation in the run-up to the general election. I'll be putting your questions to the prospective parliamentary candidates who want to be the island's next MP.
Julian Clegg, back at 6:30 tomorrow morning. BBC Radio Solent.
Bee Gees Jive Talking on BBC Radio Solent. We're talking about Lyme disease this afternoon. I've got Sarah from Lyme Disease UK, the patient support group, in the studio. Also sitting either side of her, Elliot and Moira, and the three of them. Do you say have had Lyme disease, or do you say that you still have Lyme disease?
Still have.
Still have. So many comments, so many people getting in touch. Angela rang, doesn't want to go on air, but actually wanted to say she was diagnosed 20 years ago. She suffered chronic fatigue, and she says, yep, doctors need to be educated better about it, and is worried about passing stuff on with blood. And we said we talk about this, Sarah. So can you still donate blood then if you have Lyme disease?
Yes. So I am eligible to donate blood. I've had 2 weeks of antibiotic treatment, so I am now eligible to donate blood. And yet my blood test results from Germany show I've still got an active infection, and that can be passed in the transfusion.
And then would it then also affect the person who gets the donated blood?
Absolutely, could well do. There was a study only in the Scottish Blood Bank, so I don't know. I can't give you the equivalent for England. The blood banks aren't regularly screened, but 4% of that blood bank was infected with Borrelia, the Lyme bacteria, and we can also give organs as well.
Okay, Lorna says, I was bitten by a tick about 7 years ago. I had bullseye rings around the bite. I went to the doctor's. He wasn't worried about it, sent me home, no treatment. But I've suffered from aching joints and tiredness. Could I possibly have had Lyme's disease, and how do I get a diagnosis, or is it too late? Right, who would like to take that one?
I mean, I have to say, I'm not a medical expert. I'm just here representing a patient support organisation. But in my opinion, you absolutely should have been treated at that point. If it really was a bullseye rash, I haven't got a photo of it, but that's diagnostic of itself and should have been given antibiotics at the time. I also say it's never too late. I know people that have been infected for many, many years who are getting better and who are, returning to a normal life. So absolutely go back to your GP, ensure it's a GP that has passed the Royal College of General Physicians test, and ask for them to assess you properly for Lyme disease. And feel free to join our patient support group. We'll provide the link to the radio show, and we're more than happy to walk you through that and help you through that process.
Okay, Chris, who's in the New Forest, says, my husband had Lyme disease 6 years ago. Please, can you make people realise the symptoms? Okay, so you all had different symptoms straight off, didn't you, the three of you?
I think that's one of the problems. The symptoms are different for each person. So we've
remind us what yours were Moira?
Mine was muscle stiffness, which crept up the body until it felt as if all the muscles were affected, and any sort of movement was really painful. But for other people, it's neurological, and they're finding they've got the chronic fatigue symptoms, or confusion, not being able to think straight, not being able to remember anything, migraines, headaches, and having to stop work because they can't function anymore, stop studying if they're students. So I think the problem for GPs is recognising it when it's, in my case, I saw every GP in my practice, and none of them could work out what was going on, and eventually they sent me off to a rheumatologist, because that's how my symptoms appeared.
Let's think about the bite then. Now, Elliot has handily brought in some little knitted ticks so that you know what to look for. So describe what a tick looks like, Elliot.
Well, it's an arachnid. It's got a fairly large set of jaws at the front end of it, and with which it burrows into the host to feed. But the smallest one, it feeds 3 times during its life. It hatches. It will be uninfected as it hatches, we believe. It feeds, first feed, from being almost a little bit bigger than a grain of dust or speck of dust. It feeds, it grows, it digests that meal. It then moves up the chain and feeds on feeds on sort of larger mammals, and eventually on its third feed it can, when you see them, I've seen a photograph of one which was actually mistaken as skin cancer, It said that the person who had this tick attached went to his doctor. The doctor went, "Oh my God, that's melanoma. Hospital now, have it removed." The oncologist looked at it and said, "That needs to come. We need to cut that off." Sent him to medical imaging to have the photograph taken, and the photographer looked at it and said, "Why am I photographing a tick?" So people just don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's how they grow in size. Starting as small as a speck of dust, and then they move up on the 3 feet to be something that you can look at and mistake for a mole.
Okay, so if you are... So it's very difficult then to actually work out what the tick is. So what about then the effect of the tick? So what's this bullseye rash that you've been talking about, Sarah?
Okay, so a bullseye rash, you can go on our website and look for examples, but it's normally around the site of the bite, but it can appear elsewhere on the body. A rash that appears a little bit like a target. There'll typically be a white section around the rash, and then it will go red and it will grow. It will migrate. It's a migratory rash. However, it's very important to note the majority of people will not get that rash. That is not, it
so
might only be a
like
third.
The most obvious thing. Like,
if you get that rash, you've definitely got it. That's right. The key point. And also, even if you do get the rash, it might not always look like a bullseye. It might be a different rash. So I think, that there are key symptoms to look out for. In the early stages, yes, an unexplained rash, particularly after being out in long grass. And as I said before, it's not just if you're in the New Forest. Parklands, even gardens can have infected ticks. Summer flu, headaches, fatigue, stiffness in the neck, sensitivity to light.
And these are all things that could well appear quite soon after the bite.
Within a few weeks to months, these are all early symptoms.
And is it still treatable at that stage?
Absolutely.
So we don't get the horrendous side effects that all three of you are talking about and so many people are talking about?
The majority of people treated at that stage, as long as they're given sufficient duration and dose of antibiotics until all their symptoms have ceased, absolutely recover. And I think a key symptom to look out for, particularly in children, because they can't often articulate, it can affect adults as well, but is a change in behaviour or mood. So perhaps seem a bit hyperactive, or loss of appetite, or being, not wanting to go to school or not really knowing why. Things like that are quite key to look out for in children.
Do you all want to slip your headphones on again? I'm just going to bring in Simone, who's actually in Buckinghamshire and has been listening to us this afternoon. Simone, I think, Sarah, you've spoken to Simone before. Thank you very much for calling us, Simone. I understand that it's your dad that was diagnosed.
That's correct.
Can you tell me what happened?
He walked into hospital with tummy pain, and then the next minute he went into a coma. And then not long later he had a bullseye rash on his left leg. The NHS didn't know what it was. And then as time went on, our dog died of Lyme disease. And then we sort of put 2 and 2 together. And then we realised Dad actually had Lyme disease. They wouldn't do any testing on him. And then we went to get tested with Armin Labs. He tested positive. The NHS gave him 2 weeks IV, and my dad started regaining movements. And then they said they wouldn't give him no more treatment. It was all in his head.
And what state is he in now, if you don't mind me asking? How is he?
My dad's on a tracheostomy, full ventilation, and he's paralysed.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Simone. So have you had then a positive diagnosis then from a different lab?
Yes, Armin Labs he tested positive with Armin Labs, and he also had the bullseye rash.
And so this obviously it's not just affecting your dad, this is the entire family as well, isn't it? That's been living through this with him. And when was it that he first went into hospital, when he had the bite?
2014.
So for the last 3 years, this has totally and utterly taken over your lives?
It has, yes. It's been devastating. He was in the hospital for 2 years in intensive care.
May I ask, is he at home at the moment, or is he...
He is. He's home now. They've pretty much sent him home to die. That's pretty much.
Oh, Simone, what a horrendous situation to be in, and a situation which you obviously feel should never, ever have happened.
Yes, correct.
There is. Are you getting? So is it you at home at the moment? Is your mum around, or
my mum and myself?
And just looking after your dad.
He has 24-hour care with nurses, and obviously we help as well.
And it's utterly unbelievable to think that something like this can come from just a tiny little tick.
Yes. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. You don't expect something from a little bug to do all this devastation.
No.
And then the NHS not to help. They won't help. After they saw my dad regaining movements, because he was completely paralysed, and then he started regaining movements in his hands, his feet, his neck. It was so exciting. We were so excited. We got given some hope, and then they took it all away from him.
And may I ask why they say they won't treat him now?
Because they've said he hasn't got Lyme disease, he's got MND. But they accepted the test results and gave him the treatment. And then he got movements, and then they just said it was all in his head and they won't treat him.
A horrendous situation to be stuck in. Obviously, appreciate, we don't have the people treating your dad or have treated him here to give their side of it. I'm sure you appreciate that. But
yes.
It just seemed so desperate when you're looking after your dad with your mum at the moment. Simone, look, thank you very much for calling us. There is nothing that I know we can say that is going to bring you any comfort, but I hope you feel that by able to talk about it, other people will be more aware of the symptoms and what to look out for.
Yes, it helps other people and it makes other awareness for other people to what to look out for.
Okay.
And that's all we can do at the moment to help other people.
Yeah. I totally appreciate that. Simone, thank you so much for calling us, and the very, very best to you and to your family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Heartbreaking story, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important not to raise so much alarm that people don't want to go out of their houses ever again.
Of course not.
But
you just
equally,
need to know.
We need to know, and we need to be taking prevention steps. It is unusual to have such a severe reaction to a tick, but as you've seen, it obviously has happened in this case. And prevention is crucial. There's a lot, there isn't enough research into Lyme disease. That's a key point to make. And we don't know why some people react very badly and others don't. It might be the strain. It might be the combination of co-infections. We just don't know. But what we do know is simple things we can do to try and prevent being bitten in the first place.
This one, anonymous text message saying, I had a bullseye rash. I'm now in my 50s. I was told to accept a diagnosis of disability. I almost died on painkillers and then discovered natural healing. I'm alive and very slowly improving. This person says, I haven't had any help from doctors, only self-help on the internet from others in detoxing and natural healing. I've lost my job, my house and my life. 0345 30 30 961. That's 0345 30 30 961. Another person saying, many people have been misdiagnosed due to untreated Lyme and co-infections. This person says it's costing so much money and things have to change. We'll talk next about prevention, what you can do, and again, what to look out for, and we'll give you some details of where to go for help as well.
Every ball.
Low full toss, left driven wide at mid-off, is it? Vince dives, and that is the 100.
Every run.
Full this time, Yorker length, and Rousseau digs it out and over the man.
Now, BBC Sport mobile app, and here on BBC Radio Solent.
BBC Radio Solent and Texas. Say what you want. Incidentally, you may recall for the last 2 weeks, Portsmouth supporters from the Supporters Trust have been voting on whether or not to accept a takeover bid from the American businessman Michael Eisner, billionaire Michael Eisner. They've been voting. The votes are counted. There is an announcement as to which way the football club has gone. Will it still stay in supporters' hands, or Well, they now have a new billionaire owner in the form of the former Disney chief, Michael Eisner. We will find out at 1 o'clock in the news at 1 here on BBC Radio Solent. We're talking Lyme disease first. Sarah, Elliot and Moira in the studio. Sarah is from Lyme Disease UK. Elliot and Moira, in fact, actually the three of them have Lyme disease. Quite a few questions for you. Can it be passed person to person, Sarah?
There isn't sufficient evidence. There's not enough research to answer that categorically. There is theoretically the possibility of sexual transmission. There's certainly the possibility of transmission through blood transfusion, and there is evidence that does demonstrate that it can be passed congenitally to a baby. But it's an area that we desperately need more research in.
But the main way of getting infected is tick bites, and that's...
The main way is a tick bite. There is also other insects have been proven to carry Lyme disease. So insects such as mosquitoes, fleas, sandflies have all been proven to carry, but they haven't yet been proven to transmit. That doesn't mean they definitely can't, of course, but ticks is the main one that's known. Jill's
called to say even after gardening she always checks for ticks whenever she's been out. Mary, who's in Yarmouth, says, would spraying with mosquito spray help prevent ticks or tick bites?
As in on the person?
Yeah.
So or insect repellent is absolutely a key prevention method. So if we're going out and about, we absolutely should be properly applying insect repellent. You need to make sure it is applied across all areas of the skin. Ticks are very clever. They'll climb until they find an area that you've not applied.
Oh, so it doesn't actually put them off climbing onto you?
No. I've seen a video of a tick climbing to an area where it wasn't applied. So you just apply it very well. On our website, we've I won't talk about brands on here, but we've got some information about a little piece of research that compared various brands to each other as to which were best for tick activity specifically.
Okay, this one from Ken says, why don't we just try and get rid of all the ticks?
Well, one of the things my daughter's studying at university is wildlife ecology conservation. And if you start talking to her about taking out the tick population, bearing in mind that she's a Lyme disease sufferer, the one thing that she will come back with is, well, yes, but if you start knocking out bits of that ecosystem, you don't know what other damage you're going to do. And I think, much as I'd like to turn around and have a mass tick eradication program, we don't know. You just do not know what else you would start disrupting if you started down that road.
Okay, so prevention-wise, then that's probably the best way. So we've mentioned insect spray, insect repellent.
Certainly wearing insect repellent during any outdoor activity where there's an area that you could be at risk.
Okay, so what are the areas where you could be at risk? And we can't just blanket say the whole of the New Forest.
I mean, we're almost talking like the whole of the UK, and I'm not actually exaggerating when I say that. There are maps online that you can. There's a live map which we can provide you a link to that gives you an idea of risk according to what the climate's doing.
But it's long grass.
Long grass. Mm-hmm. Any kind of woodland, heathland, overgrown areas.
And it's the countryside, basically.
But including your garden and playgrounds and things as well, they often have long grass and overgrown areas.
Okay.
If there's mice and squirrels and so on are all something that ticks feed on, 12% of grey squirrels in a study were infected with Lyme disease. So if there's mice and squirrels around, that's an indication that you could well be in an area that could have an infection.
And weather-wise?
The highest risk months are the spring and the summer, the warmer the weather. However, I believe you can contract Lyme disease in any month in the UK, and I believe it's below 4 degrees, don't quote me on that ticks actually then, cease in their activity. But a doctor's been quoted as saying, as where there's mud, there's ticks. So unless you've got solid frozen ground, unless you've sort of gone below that
they
-4,
can still live in it.
And they can still survive.
Nasty little things, aren't they? To say the least. Sarah, your organisation Lyme Disease UK.
Yes.
We will put a link on our Facebook page. We'll also put it on Twitter as well. So if you follow us on Twitter at BBC Radio Solent, we will now send out the details of how to get onto your website, of which you've got all the pictures of what to look out for and the like. I just wish the three of you the very, very best. This is obviously an ongoing thing. This is something which you're going to have for the rest of your lives that you'll be dealing with and fighting against. So the three of you, Moira, Sarah and Elliot, thank you very much for coming in and speaking to us and hopefully raising awareness of it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us in.
BBC Radio Solent.